If you do the research, you will find that before the Christian religion existed, that many of the religions were considered pagan. And so when you hear pagan being referred to as the occult, that's actually kind of a misconception. Paganism in the Wikipedia is read as this. It is primarily used in historical context referring to Greco-Roman polytheism, as well as polytheistic traditions of Europe and North Africa before Christianization. In a wider sense, extended to contemporary religions, it includes most of the Eastern religions and the indigenous traditions of the Americas, Central Asia, Australia, and Africa, as well as non-Abrahamic folk religion in general. Therefore, basically, it covers a lot of different religions. It doesn't have anything to do with Satanism or anything like that, like what we hear. The reason this is important is because if you go and you take a look at the timeline for this, if you consider that any of these religions existed, the paganism pretty much existed before Christianity, then you realize how some of Christianity was actually formed. And I'm going to prove this to you here in just a few minutes. So if we take a look at the Roman imperial and Christian periods, and we move up to in the timeline to 300, okay, you'll find that Neoplatonist, I can't pronounce his name, Iamblichus, he teaches that one emanates all the gods in a nature and that union with the one is achievable. Now I know a lot of you have heard that, right? The one, we are one, okay? This actually goes back to ancient Egypt. It says, with the one is achievable through theurgy, a magico-religious process using a system of correspondences and invocation, drawing the powers of the cosmos into the adept. In other words, reaching a state of Christ consciousness. Okay? You've heard of Christos, Krishna, Christ consciousness. That basically is, when they say drawing your powers, they don't mean putting a pentagram on the ground, lighting it with candles, and killing chickens. What they really mean is reaching your mind through meditation and through techniques, much like the monks do, in order to reach a state of enlightenment. Okay? But what you'll find here, and this actually goes all the way back to ancient Egypt, the teaching of Thoth and Ra, which is Thoth was the god of he's the god of the mind, writing, and he was also a god of magic. But don't confuse magic. For example, the things that we do here today in this world would be considered magic to them back then. So don't confuse. It's really important not to confuse those words. Okay, but when we get up to right here, let's see, 392. Okay, the Roman Christian emperor, he decrees an end to the mysteries. Okay, the Roman Christian emperor. So basically, he's saying here that we need to end this religion or this teaching. Okay, and notice it says that this guy taught. He didn't preach. He taught it. Okay, and that's important. And if you do some research on this, you'll find that it actually is not necessarily a religious text. It's more based off of philosophy. If you ever look up the 7 universal laws, you'll find that they resonate very highly with what the teachings are here. It teaches you the way the universe works. For example, one of them is the law of vibration. Everything vibrates. Well, we've learned that in science. We've learned that in science because of string theory. We know that matter is the difference between one thing and another is the way it vibrates. We already know that in science now. And science now is proving what they knew back in ancient Egypt. So this is actually a philosophy. It's not a religious text. I consider the difference between the two is one is taught, one is preached. And one is taught with with a ruler over your knuckles. And the other one is meant for you to process the information and make of it what you think, which is a much better way of teaching something than to preach it. So, let me go a little bit further now. Okay, so now we know that basically the Christianity started with the Roman Christianity, or the Roman Catholics. Take a look at some of their churches. If you want to find out about your history, take a look at the old churches. They have more information in the tapestries and the things that are painted on the wall, the symbols that they use. If you want to know about your history, if you really want to know, and you don't want to just listen to what people are telling you anymore, I highly suggest you go out to google.com and check out some Roman Catholic cathedrals, which I'm going to do for you right now. Because what I'm going to show you is a lot of you folks that are very dualistic in your thinking, and you think that all these Masonic Jews are the ones that are hiding all of this, the all-seeing eye. Well, that's not true. This actually goes back to, if you take a look at a lot of your old Roman Catholic cathedrals, you'll find that that's all over the place. For example, okay, all-seeing eye cathedral. Now, I've already pulled up a couple of examples to show you what I'm talking about. Let's take a look at the most obvious one right here. Okay, this is a pretty good one. All right, well, where is this located? That's located at the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela. All right, so we're going to go there real quick. It's a Roman Catholic cathedral, okay, in Spain. All right, so there's number one. Okay, now check this one out. What does that look like? That looks like the Eye of Ra, doesn't it? We have the eye, we have the galaxy and the dragon's tail on this side. Interesting. Well, I wonder where that is. That's at the Aegon Cathedral. Where is that? Well, it's a Roman Catholic church, and guess what? The church is the oldest cathedral in Northern Europe and was known as the Royal Church of St. Mary. Okay? Now, let's go check another one. Okay, here, I went ahead and pulled it up so we could find it. Now, here's some interesting things in here. Okay, so this is obviously, okay, here's another one. Same church, oldest one in Northern Europe. So now you can see that this all-seeing eye that you're familiar with is not tied to just these Masonic Jews. What it's actually tied to is actually not anything bad at all. And that's where the big misconception is. It has to do with a state of consciousness, Illuminati, illuminated. Basically somebody who is illumined, somebody who is enlightened. Okay, that's what this means. Now, there's a little bit more to it than that I'm going to show you here in just a bit, but let me show you a couple other things that also tie back to the same type of philosophy. Do you see this right here? Okay, now what you see in a lot of older cathedrals and Christian churches is you see Jesus, and you see him inside this thing that's shaped like a football, right? Okay, well, that thing that's shaped like a football, guess where that comes from? That comes from sacred geometry, and is considered, I'll show you. If you take a look at sacred geometry and the way that they describe Genesis, okay, so if you notice, what they talk about first is they talk about 2 points, equidistant, where you draw a sphere around them, okay? And there's also a theory called, and I believe Harvey, can't remember his last name on here, but I think he goes into it really well. Basically, you have 2 circles that intersect with each other, and they create this. It's called the Vesica Pisces in sacred geometry. Look it up, okay? But it's considered the first day of creation, or Genesis, okay? And if you notice, we see Jesus inside that in the church. And then as creation goes on, you finally reach what's called the flower of life, and then you have the fruit of life at the very end. And then it goes into connecting all the points into these, and then you get these Platonic solids. So when you guys are out there talking about Saturn's cube, and you're talking about these different shapes and stuff like that, that is all disinformation. Okay, if you take a look at the way the universe is created down to a fractal level, if you're able to ever see the geometry in nature, you'll know that it's made up of Platonic solids, and that's the reason why a lot of us are seeing these cubes around and stuff like that, because they're actually fractals in nature. and they're just smaller pieces of the puzzle. Okay, and then of course, what's interesting about this Metatron's cube here, basically, is if you go through that process, which I just showed you, and this is actually geometry. This is math, and it's showing you that the nature, if you look at it, you'll find that you can pick up a smaller piece of something that it comes from that's larger, and you're basically just seeing a smaller version of it. It's a hologram. It's holographic. And this is describing that process of how nature works. It's not anything that is that has to do with, I don't know what kind of things you guys are coming up with. I hear a lot of words, but I hear no definitions for them. So if you're going to call, you say aliens, all aliens are demons, but you don't even know what a demon is. You don't even know what an alien is. So I mean, and you don't even know where to point me to it in the text. So if you're gonna say stuff like that, if you're gonna make a statement like that, be prepared to provide people a link to your whatever sacred text that it is that you're getting it from. Don't just make statements without being able to back it up, because that just doesn't make you look very smart. So okay, so let's go back and I'll show you some more. Okay, now some of you may have seen this picture. I like to refer to this one a lot, but this is a prime example of the kind of thing that I wanted to show you. There's a lot of meaning to this, and this isn't a cathedral as well, just like some of the other ones that we've seen. What's really interesting about this cathedral, though, is there's a lot of symbolism here, and I believe, it's my theory, that part of this cathedral is an actual map, and I can actually show that to you in detail, which I've already done in a video, but I'm going to show it to you real quick. So what we have right here is we have this illumination, right? You always see this dove as well, right? And I've also pointed this out to you in other videos, that this dove symbolizes, when they say Holy Trinity, if you take a look at the center of any vortex, for example, the center of a hurricane or the center of a galaxy or anything like that, those vortexes, you will find this dove, a picture of a dove or an imprint of a dove in the center of that vortex for whatever reason. It's whatever, for some reason, the vibration that's created creates this dove appearance. Also, and what you'll notice is that dove, it will create a series of them to where it looks like they're circling into the vortex. So I always suggest you go out there and take a look at that, but that's what that means. And then when you see this triangle here, actually refers to something else that you also see circling into the vortex. And I don't know what it is, but I can tell you that it's very apparent. I'm going to show you that here in just a minute. What this particular picture here is referring to, I believe, and this is my theory, I believe this is a map. For whatever reason, and I haven't been able to find anything that's a duplicate of it, but I can tell you, I think it is a map of the Orion Nebula. Now, what's made the Orion Nebula? Well, I believe that is one of the biggest birthplaces that we know of for stars, for whatever reason. And it's close to us. So, of course, we also hear about Sirius in our past as well, right? And we hear about Orion. There is an Orion connection to our past. Whether you want to believe it or not, I'm going to show you the proof. Okay? Take a look at these clouds, these angels that are around this thing. I want you to take a look at them, and especially note this one in particular right here. Okay? And the position of him, and notice the shape of this whole thing right here. You notice that this right here in the middle is this the Holy Trinity. And if you also notice, the only place out of this whole area that you see an arc is from here to here, which is also the same geometry as the Eye of Ra, which we also saw in the other church. So there's a lot of symbolism here, and they've got things placed in certain areas so that when you take a look at it, you'll be able to map it properly. But here's how I know that it's the Orion. Let me show you the next picture. Okay, once again, here's that dove right there symbolizing the Holy Trinity. I want to show you that. Okay, notice this picture right here. This is representing the same thing as this. Okay? Same thing. How do I know? Well, remember this thing I told you here to pay attention to right here? Well, here it is, and here it is right here. Same thing. We have the same illumination in the middle, okay? And then Something else that you need to pay attention to. Notice we have the clouds moving around too, right? Going all the way around. It's the same picture.